In the heart of Zango, a quiet village hidden beneath layers of dust and despair, one woman's desperation sparked a chain of events that no one could have foreseen. By the river, where life seemed still, a choice was made, one that would lead to whispers, questions, and an unimaginable truth. Zango was a place where time seemed to stand still, a village cocooned in dust and silence. Its people lived simple lives, tethered to the unyielding rhythm of survival. Among them was Salima, a figure often overlooked, a woman whose story was woven with hardship. Her home, if it could be called that, was a crumbling shelter of sun-baked mud and brittle thatch. The walls bore the scars of seasons long gone, and the wind, cold and indifferent, slipped through the gaping cracks, mocking her feeble attempts to find comfort. Each day began the same, with the first light of dawn finding Salima on her feet. The old tin bucket in her hands was a familiar weight as she trudged towards the distant well, her bare feet stirring the dry earth beneath her. By midday, she was at the river, scrubbing clothes until her hands were raw, the calluses deepening with every stroke. By evening, she was bent over the fields, her body aching, her energy spent. Yet, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the village settled into stillness, Salima returned to an empty home and a cold, bare floor. Her neighbors spoke of her in whispers, their pity tinged with judgment. Poor Salima, they would say, shaking their heads, forever trapped in her misfortune. Her life was a cycle of endless labor and relentless poverty, a life where hope was a flicker that the wind of reality extinguished before it could burn bright. It was another scorching afternoon by the river, the kind that made the air shimmer and every task feel heavier. Salima knelt by the water, scrubbing clothes with hands hardened by years of labor. The rhythmic splash of the river was her only solace, until it was interrupted by the sound of footsteps. Startled, Salima looked up, her eyes meeting a woman unlike anyone she had ever seen. The stranger stood tall, her presence commanding and almost otherworldly. Her clothes shimmered in the sunlight, vibrant and pristine, a stark contrast to the dusty simplicity of Zango. Around her neck and wrist, jewelry gleamed, catching the light like tiny beacons. "Good day," the woman said, her voice smooth yet firm, carrying a confidence that unsettled Salima. The woman introduced herself as Camy and began to speak with an air of knowing. "I've been watching you," Camy said, her gaze unwavering. "I know your struggles, and I have a proposal for you, one that will change your life forever." Salima's heart raced, torn between curiosity and caution. What kind of proposal could a woman like this have for someone like her? Camy reached into her bag and pulled out a thick bundle of crisp banknotes, the sight of which made Salima's breath catch. "It's simple," Camy continued, her voice calm but insistent. "Collect used panties from the villagers and bring them to me. For each load, I will pay you handsomely." The words hung in the air, strange and heavy. Salima stared at the money, her hands trembling slightly. The offer was odd, unsettling even, but the promise of wealth, of an escape from her endless toil, was undeniable. "Why panties?" Salima asked hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. Camy smiled, a smile that offered no answers but seemed to dismiss the need for them. "Just trust me," she said. "Do this, and you'll never be poor again." Salima was left alone by the river, the money heavy in her hands and her mind spinning with questions. The task felt strange, unnatural, but for the first time in her life, hope flickered in the darkness. Could this be her chance to break free, or was she stepping into something she didn't fully understand? With the money from Camy still fresh in her hands, Salima began her strange new trade. She moved through the village with colorful buckets and bowls, her voice steady as she knocked on doors. "I'm exchanging this for anything you no longer need, clothes, shoes, even panties," she would say. The villagers, intrigued by her bright wares, obliged, handing over piles of worn items without question. Day by day, her sack grew fuller, and so did her pockets. For the first time, Salima felt a shift in her life. She repaired her crumbling home, patching the gaping holes in the walls and replacing the leaking roof. She bought herself new clothes, no longer ashamed of her appearance. At the market, she purchased fresh food, savoring meals she had only dreamed of before. The whispers about her misfortune turned to murmurs of awe as the villagers marveled at her transformation. But beneath her newfound success, there was a shadow that lingered. Every night, Salima slipped away from the village, her sack in hand, to meet Camy by the river. Under the pale light of the moon, she watched as Camy performed her rituals. The sacks, filled with the collected panties, glowed with an eerie light as Camy chanted words Salima couldn't understand. The air around them seemed to hum, heavy with an energy that both frightened and fascinated her. Salima never asked questions, though the sight unsettled her deeply. She clung to the money, convincing herself that it was worth it. After all, her life had finally begun to change. But as Camy's low, rhythmic chants echoed through the night, the glowing sacks vanishing into darkness, Salima couldn't shake the feeling that her success came at a cost she had yet to comprehend. Salima's nightly trips to the river did not go unnoticed. Among the villagers, there was one who grew suspicious, Tinu, a sharp-eyed woman who had long wondered about Salima's sudden prosperity. Night after night, Tinu watched as Salima left her home, her movements careful and deliberate. One evening, curiosity overcame her caution. Cloaking herself in the shadows, Tinu followed. She trailed Salima to the river, staying hidden among the tall grass. There, under the pale moonlight, she witnessed something that sent chills down her spine. Camy stood by the glowing sacks, her hands raised as she chanted in a language unknown to Tinu. The air seemed to tremble with energy as the sacks began to vanish into thin air, leaving behind an eerie silence. Tinu's breath caught as she realized the truth. The panties were being used for dark rituals, and the villagers were unknowingly part of something unholy. The next morning, Tinu ran to the elders, her words stumbling out in urgency. The village bell rang, summoning everyone to the square. Salima was brought forward, her calm expression hiding the turmoil brewing within. The elders demanded answers, but Salima said nothing. It was only when the village priest was called and a powerful ritual was performed that the curse of silence was lifted. Trembling, Salima confessed everything. Her words spilled out in broken sentences as the villagers listened in stunned silence. She described how Camy's rituals had been stealing their strength and fortune, leaving her bound to the dark trade in exchange for wealth. The villagers' murmurs turned to shouts of anger and disbelief. They could not comprehend how such a betrayal could have been hidden in plain sight for so long. The villagers, led by the priest, wasted no time. With torches in hand, they stormed the ancient baobab tree where Camy's lair was hidden. Beneath its gnarled roots, They uncovered her tools of ritual, strange objects, glowing remnants, and symbols that spoke of a power none dared to understand. The villagers destroyed everything, their anger fueling their every action. The air was thick with smoke and resolve as Camy was dragged to the village square, powerless and exposed. Justice was swift. Camy's reign of deceit and darkness was brought to an end, and the villagers celebrated the return of their strength and fortune. But the joy of victory was tainted by the lingering bitterness toward Salima. Though she had been a pawn in Camy's game, the villagers could not forget her part in their suffering. With her head bowed, Salima left Zango, her belongings bundled in a cloth and her steps heavy with shame. She walked away from the only home she had ever known, her figure silhouetted against the fading light of the sunset. Behind her, the whispers of the villagers grew softer, their words carrying both pity and caution. Her story would be told for generations, not as a tale of triumph, but as a warning, a reminder of how desperation can lead even the most innocent down a path of darkness. In the quiet of the night, Zango returned to its stillness, its people forever changed by the shadows that had passed through their lives. This tale reminds us that desperation can lead us down dangerous paths, where choices made in darkness often come at an unthinkable cost. It serves as a warning that hidden evil often disguises itself as hope, preying on those who long for a better life. What would you have done in Salima's place? Would you have taken the risk or walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments below, we'd love to hear from you. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another tale. Stay tuned for more African stories that teach, inspire, and intrigue. Thank you for watching, and until next time, remember, every choice has a consequence.